Masechet Avoda Zara Daf Ayin Vav, and with this daf we complete the Perek and the Masechet. Tenor Rabbanan Halokech Kile Tashmish Min Hagoyim Devarim Shelo Nishtamesh Bahen Matbilan Vehen Tehorin. If someone buys utensils from a non-Jew, if they are new, they were never used before, there's no non-kosher taste in them, then one need only immerse them in a mikveh, and then you can use them. דברים שנשתמש בהן על ידי סונן, כגון כוסות וקיתוניות וסלוחיות מדיחן ומטבילן והם טהורין. If there are items that are used for cold, like cups, jugs, and flasks that you drink out of, cold liquids, then one need only rinse them, immerse them in a mikveh, and then they're pure. You rinse them to get any non-kosher liquids off of them, but because it's cold, they didn't absorb. And so one just has to rinse and put them in the mikveh, and then the Jew can use them. דברים שנשתמש בהן על ידי חמין, כגון היורות והקומקמוסון ומחמי חמין, מגעילן ומטבילן והן טהורין. Things that are used for hot food or drink, large pots, kettles, samovars. Then you have to purge them in boiling water and also dunk them in a mikveh, and then they are kosher for use. If it's used directly in fire, not in a pot on a stove, but rather directly on a grill, כגון השפודין והאסקלאות, מלבנן ומטבילן והן טהורין. Then spits and grills, one has to heat them until it's white hot, and also immerse them in the mikveh, and then they can be used. וכולן שנשתמש בהן עד שלא יטביל ושלא יגעיל ושלא ילבן, תנא חדה אסור ותנא אידך מותר. So all that was לכתחילה. But how about בדיעבד? If a Jew took these items and used them without immersing in a mikveh and without putting into boiling water or in fire until white hot, without koshering them, then what's the status of the food that one cooks in it? There's two baraitot. One baraita says it's prohibited. It's going to have taste now of that prohibited food, but another baraita says b'di'avad, it's okay. So how can we understand this? La kashya. Ha kiman amar noten tam nifgam asur. Ha kiman amar noten tam nifgam mutar. These two baraitot are following different opinions, and one of them says that if something gives bad taste, then it's prohibited. That's the first baraita that says asur. Even though after a while, whatever taste went into the vessel, the walls of the vessel, it's going to give a bad taste. Ideally, when you cook something, you want a clean vessel. I don't want to taste anything from the meal that I made beforehand. And so, one opinion says, even though it's giving a bad taste, even a bad taste from non-kosher food still is going to make the food prohibited, and therefore, if you don't kosher it, the food that you make is prohibited. But the one that says mutar says that noten tam mifgam mutar, only if it gives good taste from the non-kosher, then it'll make the new food prohibited. But if it gives bad taste, and this was already in the walls, and now it's coming out, I don't want that taste, so therefore, the food that results is permitted. Now, according to the opinion that says, if it gives a bad taste, then it's permitted to eat, so why would you ever need purging of utensils that the Torah says, these Midianite vessels, you have to make sure to get the taste out in water and fire. So when would you ever need to do that? Because whenever you're using it, isn't it giving bad taste? And therefore, it would always be permitted. So there's no need to kosher vessels. Rav Chiya, the son of Rav Huna, says, when the Torah says you have to kosher the vessels, that's only if you can use it the same day. If the non-Jew went and cooked pork in the morning, and now you're going to use it in the afternoon, so it's still the same day, so it's not spoiled yet. It's still going to give some good taste to the next dish. In that case, if you want to use it on the same day, then you have to kosher it. But if you're not using it the same day, but after the next day or any time afterwards, then it's not going to give good taste. And then, and in that case, it's just a bad taste. And if you cooked in it, b'di'avad, then the food that you cook in it would be permitted. If it's the next day, if you cook it on the same day without koshering it, then it would be prohibited. Mikan ve'elach lishteri. Now we ask, if so, that noten tam lifgam is mutar, then on the second day, after, or third day, any day after the non-Jew used it, let it be permitted totally. Even lechatechila, go ahead and use it. Why would you need to kosher any vessels if you're not using it on the very same day? And the answer is gezerah, kedera shena bat yoma, mishum kedera bat yoma. Oh, so the rabbis have made a gezerah that if we say you don't have to kosher a vessel on the next day, then they're not going to kosher it on the very same day, because usually you don't use it on the same day. And so we make a gezerah for something that is not bat yoma. We have to kosher that also, so that will make sure that if you're using it on the same day that the non-Jew used it for non-kosher, that also you will. But that's the chatechila. You should always kosher pasta no matter what. B'di'avad, if you didn't on the very same day that the non-Jew used it, then the food is prohibited. But if you use it on the next day, b'di'avad, the food is permitted, because only gezerah. Ve'idach, and the other opinion that says noten tan mifgam is prohibited, what would be their source? So they would say kedera bat yoma name mifgam pagma. Even on the very same day, they're still giving a detrimental taste. Everybody would rather use a pot that has no taste at all from a previous meal, even just from the same day, right? I don't want to taste what someone cooked in this thing before, so it's always called a taste that is detrimental. And therefore, since the Torah comes and says you have to kosher these vessels that you got from the Midianites, well, by definition, if you're cooking something after they did, it's going to be a bad taste. And yet the Torah says that you have to kosher the vessels. And so from here we can learn that for sure, if it gives a good taste, that's definitely prohibited. But even if it gives a bad taste, it's also prohibited. Rameh le Rav Amram le Rav Sheshat. Now, Rav Amram brought a contradiction between two sources to Rav Sheshat. Tenan, השפודין והאסכלה מלבנן באור, והתניא גבי קודשים, השפוד והאסכלה magillan behamin. In our Mishnah, it says that spits and grills, one has to do libun. That's in white, make them white hot in fire. But there is a Mishnah in Masechet Zevachim that regarding kodashim, in order to reuse a utensil that was used to prepare sacrificial meat, if it's a spit or a grill, then you put them into hot water. You do hag'ala. And so we seem to have a contradiction. Now, kodashim, certainly those are kosher. By definition, these are properly done. It's a proper sacrifice. And let's say it's a korban shelamim. And so the korban shelamim, you're going to be preparing it on a spit or on a grill. Now, that is kosher on that day, and the owner can eat it, the kohanim can eat it, betahara, inside the walls of Yerushalayim. The problem is that it will become notad. If it's korban shelamim, you're permitted to eat the meat on that day, that night, and the next day. But already the next night it becomes notad, and therefore any flavor that's absorbed in the walls of these vessels also will become notad. And so, therefore, they have to be purged in order to use them again, so that the notar taste doesn't go into the next meal that you cook with this grill. And so here, the Mishnah says, it's sufficient just to do hagala in hot water. So we have a contradiction. Both are talking about getting taste out of a grill. One says you have to put it in fire, and one says it's enough to do hagala. Amar le Amram beri, ma inyan kodashim esel gi'olei goyim, hacha hetera bala, hatam isura bala. Rav Sheshat says, Amram, my son, wasn't literally his son, he's saying, my student, why are you comparing sacrificial meat to non-kosher food that was cooked in a utensil that you have to purge? In the case of sacrificial meat, at the time that you cooked it, it was permitted. The sacrificial meat is kosher. It's permitted. And so it absorbed while it was kosher. Over there, when non-Jews are cooking pig on a grill, at the time that it absorbs, it is prohibited substance that it absorbed. So if it absorbs prohibited substance, that's worse. You have to use fire to get it out. If at the time that it absorbs, it was permitted, then it's enough to use boiling water to get it out. Amar Rava, sof ki kapalit, isura kapalit. Rava says, I don't understand that distinction, because in the end, when you're cooking the next meal in it, and it's emitting flavor, the flavor that it is emitting is prohibited. If it was pig that was cooked in it originally, now pig is coming out. If it was sacrifice that was cooked in it originally, and now if you're going to cook in it again 2 days later, then it's notad, and that is prohibited flavor. So you got to get that flavor out. So how are you going to get it out? Either pick one, pick fire or water, but it should be the same. So he says, I don't see the distinction. What's the difference? What it was when it went in, it's still prohibited when it goes out. So you have to get it out. However, you're supposed to get it out. We're going to come back to this answer at the end. But now we're going to explore another possibility. Ela amar Rava, my hag'ala name shetifa umerika. Rather, Rava says, when the Mishnah says for sacrificial meat that you do hag'ala, it meant not only do you do serefa, you put it in fire, but you also need to do hag'ala. And it says it here in this pasuk that kli cheres hashetibusha bo yishabed, regarding sacrifices, if you cook it in an earthenware vessel, that's fine, but then you have to break the earthenware vessel because the flavor will become notad, and there's no way to kosher an earthenware vessel. And it says if it's boiled in nehoshit and copper, bushala, morak v'shutaf b'mayim, then it should be cleansed and rinsed with water. What does that mean, cleansed and rinsed with water? So he's understanding this to mean that you do hag'ala, shetifa umerika. So that's what our Mishnah here says. In regard the Mishnah in Zevachim says magilan bechamin. That's referring to the fact that you have to put it in boiling water. But it's not saying only boiling water. It's assuming yes, and also you have to put it in fire. So actually you need both. Amar le Abaye, mida me medika shtifa besonen hagala bechamin. Abaye says, no, it doesn't make any sense. You can't say that this pasuk over here, when it says morak b'shutaf b'mayim, means boiling water, because washing and rinsing, that's with cold water. You put cold water and you put soap, and you wash it. But hagala has to be with boiling water. These are not the same. So you can't equate these things. Ela amar Abaye, yagid alav re'o. Abaye has a different answer altogether. And he quotes the pasuk that its friend will tell about it. In other words, each of these two mishnayot, they are related to each other, and each one is saying something that the other one does not. Tana hacha libun v'uadin lahagala. Tana hatam hagala v'uadin libun. Over here in our Mishnah, Masechet Avoda Zara, it tells us that non-kosher food was cooked in a vessel, then you need libun. And of course, you also need hagala. But our Mishnah here is telling us this one ingredient that you need is libun. And the Mishnah over there in Masechet Zevachim is telling us, you need hagala. And yes, of course you need libun. That you know from the other Mishnah. So we're getting the message, we're getting the law, not from one place that has an all in one place, but it's like two messengers are coming, and each one is saying one of the things you need. This Mishnah says you need libun. The other Mishnah says you need hagala, and in fact you need both of them. Amar le Rava, yachi litninhu lekulhu behada, litni hada beidach achariti, velema yagid alav re'o. Rava said that doesn't make sense. We have a principle of the friend can say something, but in order to use that principle, you have to have one place that says the whole system. You have to have one Mishnah that says, you need libun and hagala. Fine, now I know it. Then the other one can be shorthand and said, you need libun. And then you look at the other place where you have the full system that you need, and then the other one is informing on the place where it's shortened. That you can have, but to have each one of them is only part of the ceremony that you need, well, that's not sufficient. So this doesn't make sense that they have to, each one only says one of the items. You need one place to say the whole thing. Ela amar Rava, kadashim hainu ta'amayu, ked Rav Nachman amar Rabba bar Avoda amar kol yom veyom naaseh gi'ul lechavedo. Rather, Rava says, when it comes to sacrifices, this is why in sacrifices, the Mishnah says you only need hagala and you don't need libun. You know why you don't need libun? As Rav Nachman said, name of Rabba bar Abu, every day you use the same vessel continuously in the Bet HaMikdash. And so today you made a korban shalamim. Okay, good. So the flavor in there is kosher today and tonight and tomorrow. Now the next day you can use it again because there's a lot of korbanot. There's not so many vessels that are dedicated to this. And so the next day you're going to make another korban shalamim. Well, that's okay. And when you boil the water on the second day, that itself will be a koshering process. In order to kosher a pot, you don't have to boil it just for koshering. The fact that you boiled water, now the taste that was there from yesterday is gone, and now you're going to use that water to cook the next meal in it, or rather a grill that we're using to cook the next meal in it. And then the day after that will kosher and purge any taste from the day before. So as long as it's in continual use, then every day koshers it from the day before. And that's why regarding sacrifices, there's no need to do libun, whereas if you're getting some from a regular utensil from a non-Jew, he doesn't make a barbecue every day. He used a grill last week. He used it 3 days ago. Okay, but here it's baked in, and it's and now you want to use it. Has prohibited item in it. Has prohibited substance. Even that same day has prohibited substance in it. So you have to do libun for non-kosher food in it. You have to do libun to get it out. But as long as you're cooking in it every day, which you do for these sacrifices, then every day it's already kosher from the day before, and that's why you don't need to do libun. Tenach shelamim, we say, okay, that makes sense for shelamim, where you have a day, a night, and a day. Since you can eat it for 2 days, before it becomes notad and prohibited, you're already purging it by making it hot and using it for cooking on the next day. So it never becomes prohibited. And since it never becomes prohibited, we don't need this high level of libun to get all the prohibited taste out. There's no prohibited taste. It's always permitted taste. אלא חטאת, כיוון דליום בלילה מתעכלה, כי מבשל בה הידנה חטאת, הווה נותר, כי הדר מבשל בה למחר, או שלמים או חטאת, כפליט נותר דחטאת, דהידנה בחטאת ושלמים דלמחר. But what if you're going to cook a korban hatat in it? Korban hatat, that meat is only permitted for that day and that night. So once, let's say today, let's say it's a Sunday, and you cook a korban hatat now today on Sunday. Now on the next day, that night, Sunday night, that after the night is finished, it's going to become notar already. And so now on Monday, let's say on Monday we use that same grill for a shilamim or for a korban hatat. Now it's going to be emitting notar of hatat, which from Sunday is prohibited and it's going to go into the chatat or shilamim from Monday. And so korban chatat is going to become notar by the next day. And so regarding korbanot also, we will need libun, because that's what you're saying. You need libun if it's a prohibited taste, and it will be a prohibited taste. So we say, oh, you know what? Anytime you're going to use a vessel to cook a korban hatat today, also on the same day, offer a korban shalamim and cook it in that same vessel. And that way, as long as you do a korban shalamim every day, even if you did a korban hatat also on that day, that's okay. Because then the next day, if you do a hatat in the morning, so the shilamim that you do in the afternoon will remove the taste of the chatat in the morning. And then you're good till the next day. And then the next day you do another korban shilamim or whatever you use the next day. So as long as anytime you do a chatat, also do a shilamim later on that same day. And by doing it this way, the hatat of the next day and the shilamim from the previous day will at once be completely finished, completed simultaneously, so that, let's say we had a shilamim on Sunday, and on Monday we have a korban chatat, so then on Monday also do a shilamim, and then that will purge any taste from the shilamim from Sunday and the chatat from Monday. And then on the next day, on Tuesday, we're good, and we can use it for a shilamim on Tuesday. So as long as you're doing a shilamim every day after a chatat, then it's permitted. This answer is so good that now we say, why would you ever need to even boil it? If there's never going to be notar in it, we're always going to cook in it again, and thereby purge any taste that was in it from while it's still permitted before it becomes notad, and that's why you don't need libun. Well, then you don't need to boil it in boiling water either. You don't need hagalah because there's never any non-kosher taste inside, so you wouldn't need anything. Kashya, you're right. This is a good question. Rav Papa Amar, hi karid, hi la karid. Rav Papa offers a different way of solving the contradiction between the two Mishnayot. And he said, when it comes to a non-Jew using utensils, using a grill, because he doesn't use it every day, it ends up getting crusty on it. And so to get that taste out, you need more power. You need libun with fire. But something, a vessel that's used for sacrificial meat, because it's being used all the time, every day, so it's not going to become crusty. So yeah, you want to get the taste out, but it's sufficient to use hot water, dip the grill in hot water, and that will get it out. Because it's being used every day, it's easier to get that taste out. Rav Ashi says, I want to go back to one of the previous answers that we said, that it's different because in sacrificial meat, when it's absorbing the taste, that's permitted taste. It only becomes prohibited as notad afterwards while it's absorbed in the walls. But with regard to something owned by a non-Jew, when he's cooking his pig in it, as it absorbs, it's already prohibited. Now, we asked about that answer, that what does it matter? At the time that it's emitting flavor, it's prohibited. So it's prohibited either way while it's emitting. And that's what we're worried about. And he'll answer to that, yeah, but at the time that it's emitting flavor, the original prohibited item is not there. You emptied out the pot or the grill. You cleaned it off. So there's no more of the original prohibited food item. So that makes a big difference. When you have the prohibited food item, the pig, right there, and it's entering in while the prohibited food is there, so that gives it more power. And to get that out, you're going to need to do libun. Whereas when it comes to sacrificial meat, when it goes in, it's permitted. And then the meat itself, you wash off. There's no more meat. There's no more meat there. And so now what's coming out? Just the remnant, just the taste of it, that while it was inside, it went in as permitted. While it was inside, now it's notad. But there's no meat. It's the meat itself that becomes notad. You can say the taste also becomes notad. And how much is that taste gonna affect it? And so just the taste becoming notad is not as powerful, and therefore it's sufficient to dip the grill in boiling water in order to get that taste out. Now, how much do you have to put something in fire before a grill can be kosher? Amar bimaneh tashir kelipatan. It's enough that the outer layer will shed. The outer layer of the grill comes off. And how do you put it in, immerse it in boiling water? You take a small pot and you put it in a big pot, and then it fits in. So you immerse it in boiling water in the big pot. What about the big pot? How are we going to kosher? Yeah, let's say the biggest pot that you have doesn't fit in any other pot. How are you going to kosher it? For example, there was a big cauldron in the house of Rav Akabya. So how's he going to kosher this big cauldron? He surrounded it with gedafna delisha apuma. He surrounded the rim with dough, so that then he could fill it up even higher than the rim, because there's dough all around that's going to keep the water in. And he filled it all the way up with water and boiled it. Now there's boiling water in the whole pot and even above the rim. And so that way the boiling water will kosher the entire pot. Amarava man chakim leme'ebad ki hamileta ilav Rav Akabya de gabrada bahu. Rava said, who would be so wise as to think of such a great solution? Only Rav Akabya could think of that, because he is a great man. Kasavar kebolo kachpoto ma bolo benisosot afpoto benisosot. And he figured that when there's the principle, just like it absorbs, so too it will emit. And so at the rim, what's the rim absorbing? The drops that are going to spark and fly out while you're cooking something and it's boiling. So there's drops that fall onto the rim. And if it's non-kosher before, it's going to make the rim also non-kosher. So too, when I'm going to kosher it, so as long as I can fill it up all the way and put a little dough all around the sides so that it can fill up all the way, then those drops of boiling water that are there at the rim will be able to kosher it. And finally, the end of the Mishnah teaches, Hasakin, shafaha vehi tehora. If you have a knife that was used by non-Jews for non-kosher, then you have to polish it, and then it's kosher. Amarav ukaba bar hama. V'no'asa sara pa'amim bakarka. How do you do that? How do you polish it off? You stick it into the ground 10 times, and that friction of putting it into the ground, that will scrape off any dirt or grease that is on the knife. Amar Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua ubekarka she'ena Avoda. Rav Huna, son of Rav Yoshua, says you have to put it in untilled earth, meaning the earth has to be hard so that it's difficult to thrust it into the ground, and that way that the packed earth will take off any dirt that remains on the knife. Amar Rav Kahana upsakin yafa she'en ba gumot. Rav Kahana says this is only going to work if it's a good knife that doesn't have notches, scrapes, and holes in it. Then it's smooth, and then that way the earth will get all the dirt off of it. Tanyam namehachi sakin yafa she'en ba gumot no'asa sara pamim ba karka. There's a braita that supports this ruling that as long as it's a good knife that doesn't have notches in it, then you can thrust it into the ground 10 times, and that will be kosher. Amar Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua lechol basonen. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says this is sufficient for eating cold food with it. If it's hot food, then you're going to also have to somehow get the hot food out, either with boiling water or in fire. Kihad mor Yehuda ubati bar tuvi havu yatvi kameh de shavor malka. And we have a story regarding a knife involving Mor Yehuda. He was from the household of the exilarch of the Resh Galuta. So Mor Yehuda, a very important Jewish guy, and also Bati Bar Tuvi, he's a wealthy Jew. And they were sitting in front of King Shapur. That's the Persian king. Okay, very important person. The servants brought before the king an etrog to eat. Pesak achal, pesak vehab lebati bar tuvi. And so the king, he cut a slice and ate it himself with a knife. And then he cut another slice and gave it to Bati bar tuvi without koshering the knife. Hadar dasa sarazimne bar'a. And then the king, what do you know? King Shapur of Persia knew this halacha. He took the knife and thrust it into the ground 10 times to kosher it. And only then cut the next slice and gave it to Mor Yehuda. He knew that Mor Yehuda is Jewish, is an important person from the house of the Resh Galuta, and is going to only want to eat kosher. And so the king prepared the knife to be kosher and then served him. Amar le Bati bar Tuvi, the other rich guy, who also happened to be Jewish, said, V'ahu gabra la bar Yisrael hu, and that guy, he's referring to himself, am I not Jewish? How come you koshered the knife only for Mor Yehuda? Why didn't you kosher the knife before you gave me a slice? Amale mor kim li begave, mor lakim li begave. And King Shapur says, I know Mor Yehuda. I know he's Jewish and meticulous about halacha. You, I didn't know. I don't know about you. I don't know if you care so much about the laws of kashrut. Are you meticulous? I didn't know anything about you, so I didn't bother koshering it for you. That's one version. There's another version that is much sharper. In this version, King Shapur tells the rich guy Bati Bar Tuvi, he says, don't you remember what you did last night? He's hinting. There was if you were a guest in a Persian palace, the custom was that they would send a woman to each guest to be with the man. So you remember what happened last night? I sent you a woman and you sinned with her. So you sinned with her. Mor Yehuda, I sent him a woman, but he rejected her because he keeps halacha. So just like he keeps halacha and he keeps away from a non-Jewish woman, now I know he's careful about halacha. He's going to want to keep away from non-Jewish food, unkosher food also. But you had no problem socializing and sinned with the woman I sent you last night. Oh, so now all of a sudden you care about eating kosher food? So this is a perfect note to end on, because it's a kind of a tikkun of that story that we saw before about the men who are sitting with the non-Jewish zonah. They sin with the zonah, but they're very careful not to let her touch the wine. That's totally hypocritical. So the whole point, a major point of a lot of the laws that we learned in this Masechet was to keep away from idolatry, to keep away from socializing with things that do with idolatry because of intermarriage and negative influence. And so the sages utilized a lot of the laws of food, yayin nesech, and other things that are eaten together, because eating together is a really important way of making bonds and socializing. And so the rabbi said, you know what, keep away from these foods that are from non-Jews, so that we will keep the Jewish identity strong. Well, that's a major point of it. So this guy, he shows that he doesn't care about that. He's socializing with this woman, so it seems he wouldn't care about eating kosher either. So King Shapur was very insightful here. He says, well, if you don't care about one, then you're not going to care about the other. If you're not careful in one, and you're going to end up not being careful in the other. But rather, this is a whole system, a package deal, and the rabbis in their wisdom said, let's be careful. Yes, you can be friends, you can do business, you can do a lot of things with the people around you, but because of the danger of idolatry and negative influences, we should always have these reminders, and one of the major reminders is in the way that we eat and what we eat and where and with whom. And by keeping these halachot, we will make sure to keep away from such negative influences. Hadran Allah chasochet hapoel uselik ala masechet avoda zara chazakim uberuchim. Baruch Adonai leolam. Amen ve'amen.